There's that old saying, as you sow, so shall you reap. Well, right now, we're seeing that play out on a massive geopolitical scale. Imagine a country that's been a battleground for its neighbors for decades. Now, suddenly, it's turning the tables on them. This is the story of Afghanistan's incredible rise and why it's becoming a total nightmare for the countries right next door. Yeah, that saying, it just perfectly captures this wild reversal of fortunes happening between Afghanistan and its Islamic neighbors. For so long, Afghanistan was just a pawn in their grand games. But not anymore. Now, they're writing their own rules. And boy, are those neighbors starting to feel the consequences. And you know who's feeling this the most? Pakistan. I mean, this reversal is absolutely stunning when you look at their situation. They thought they'd scored this huge strategic victory, right? A friendly, pro-Pakistan government in Kabul. Instead, it's turned into an absolute nightmare. So let's get into exactly how this all went so wrong for them. Okay, so picture this. It's 2021, the Taliban sweeps back into power, and in Pakistan, they're celebrating. I mean, literally celebrating. Their prime minister at the time, Imran Khan, even said the Afghans had broken the shackles of slavery. You could feel a real sense of triumph coming from Islamabad. And the thinking behind the celebration was pretty simple, really. After decades of supporting the Taliban, Pakistan figured they'd finally earn themselves a puppet government. They expected Kabul to just fall in line, do whatever they said, on border issues, on trade, on their whole strategy against India. But man, were they in for a rude awakening. So where did the trouble start? Well, it happened almost immediately. The first major crack in Pakistan's victory plan came with the Taliban's flat-out rejection of the border between the two countries. This is a huge flashpoint, and it's all about something called the Durand Line. And to get what's happening now, you really have to understand the history of this border. See, the Durand Line wasn't created by Afghans or Pakistanis. It was drawn on a map by the British way back in 1893. It was basically a colonial move to create a buffer zone against Russia. But in doing that, they sliced the entire ethnic Pashtun population right in two. And that one act planted the seeds for a conflict that's exploding today. And here's the absolute kicker. The Taliban is overwhelmingly made up of ethnic Pashtuns. So for them, this border is a total fraud, a colonial scar on their land. This isn't just some dusty political disagreement, you guys. This is raw Pashtun nationalism. They don't just want to ignore the line. They're actively claiming huge chunks of Pakistani territory as their own. And let me be clear, this has gone way beyond a simple disagreement. It's gotten violent. We're talking about Taliban soldiers physically ripping down border fences, actually seizing Pakistani checkpoints, and getting into deadly firefights with Pakistani soldiers. Heck, Afghanistan's own defense minister is now on record openly threatening Pakistan over this. It's serious. But the problem for Pakistan doesn't even stop at the border. The Afghan Taliban is now reportedly funding and arming its ideological twin, the Pakistani Taliban, also known as the TTP. And the results? It's been absolutely catastrophic. We've seen a massive surge in terrorism inside Pakistan. Suicide bombings up by a staggering 500%. Think about that. The very tactics Pakistan once supported are now being turned against them. Talk about reaping what you sow. So Pakistan is in a tough spot, but are they the only ones? Not by a long shot. This newly assertive Afghanistan has another powerful tool it's using to flex its muscles and project influence. And that tool is water. So the government has declared this new water sovereignty policy. What does that mean? Well, essentially, they're taking all those old water-sharing treaties and just tearing them up. This is Resource Nationalism 101. The message is simple. Afghanistan's needs come first. If there's any water left over after they're done with it, then maybe their neighbors can have some. And the centerpiece of this whole plan is something called the Kosh-Tapa Canal. And when I say this thing is massive, I mean it. It's a 285-kilometer-long canal designed to do one thing: turn 500,000 hectares of barren desert into lush farmland. I mean, for a country where nearly half the population is facing food insecurity, this isn't just an infrastructure project, it's a national lifeline. But here's the problem. One country's lifeline can easily become another country's crisis. Just look at the projections. This one canal could cut the water flowing to Turkmenistan by half. That could wreck their entire agricultural sector. And then there's Iran, a country that's already 97% arid. For them, this isn't just bad news. It could turn an already severe drought into an absolute catastrophe. We're not talking about an environmental issue here. This is an existential threat. Okay, so what is driving all this? This aggressive new attitude on borders, on water? What's the game plan? Well, it's actually all part of a very clear and honestly, a surprisingly effective domestic strategy. You can boil it all down to just two words: Afghanistan first. One of the first things they did was launch this almost surgical strike on corruption. And get this, the World Bank reports that in 2022, they collected over $1.5 billion in revenue. And that's with zero foreign aid. This is money that for years just vanished into thin air. Now, it's actually funding the state. It's building legitimacy from the ground up. And they're not just sitting on that cash. They're pouring it into reviving these massive infrastructure projects that have been collecting dust for decades. We're talking pipelines, railways, even extensions of China's Belt and Road. See, these aren't just construction jobs. This is a vision, a plan to reposition Afghanistan from a war zone into a critical, independent energy and transit hub for the entire region. So when you put it all together, the border fights, the water wars, this huge economic push, it all points to a fundamental shift. A whole new geopolitical game is starting. And believe me, it's creating some very unexpected winners and losers. And the irony here is just off the charts. You have this concept of the Islamic Ummah, this idea of a unified global Muslim community. But that whole idea is being shattered by straight-up national interest. The very country its neighbors spent decades trying to control is now in direct conflict with them. Afghanistan's national revival has become their neighbors' regional nightmare. But as Afghanistan squares up against its traditional neighbors, it's also making a pivot towards a very unlikely new partner, India. Yeah, a relationship that was once all about suspicion is now warming up, and fast. It's turning into a real partnership. And we're not just talking about diplomatic handshakes here. This is a reality you can see on the ground. It's pretty common to hear Afghans call Indians brothers. Now compare that to the deep-seated distrust, even hate, they feel towards Pakistanis. And you have to ask why. Well, it's simple. For decades, while Pakistan was accused of meddling and sending fighters, what was India doing? They were building schools, hospitals, and dams. So for India, the takeaway is crystal clear. A stable, independent, and developing Afghanistan, one that's actively pushing back against Pakistani influence, that's not just a good thing, it's a massive strategic win. You know that old saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend? Well, it has never been more true than it is right here, right now. All of which leaves us with a huge question. Are we actually witnessing the birth of a new, assertive Afghanistan? One that's finally taking control of its own destiny? And if we are, what's the final cost going to be for the neighbors who, for so long, thought they were the ones pulling the strings? The geopolitical chessboard has been reset, and this game has only just begun.